Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to share the screen. How do I get rid of this? Maybe that'll do it. Okay. Now let's share the screen. No, it doesn't do it. Just bear with me for a minute, guys.
Yeah, go to share screen and then select the screen that you want to show.
Okay, share screen. And suppose I try this. Aha, we're there. I disappeared, but that's all right. Okay, can you still hear me? Am I on the air?
We can hear you, but we aren't seeing your screen share yet.
No screen.
You can't see it?
No.
Okay.
I don't think you shared it, Mike.
We can see you, but we can't see the screen.
All right.
So
Now,
go to share screen. It'll pop
I
up a
did.
window. It'll pop up a window there, and it'll show one or two windows or whatever you've got open on your desktop. And select your presentation one.
Let's see if this works.
That's it.
I think we're in business.
We're in business now.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for turning up for part 2 of N1MM Logger for Dummies. Spent quite a lot of hours working on this together with Doug V3MV. So I hope there's a good idea to be found here for each one of you. Just a little more repeating about myself for those who are not familiar with me. I've been contesting for a long time, since the late 1950s. Still contesting. I had 107 contacts in the 1 hour CW 2 o'clock. I'm getting nasty notes from my computer here. And had about 800 odd contacts in the CQ Worldwide CW contest on the weekend. The contributors to this particular effort, first of all, Doug, V3MV, who figured out the easy way to do a telnet window configuration and set up the clusters. And this sounds like a very quick and easy thing to do, but from the amount of information that Doug sent me, he spent hours and hours and hours, sent me far more information and detail than I could possibly use in this presentation. But I've printed out all of his many ideas, so at least I will benefit if nobody else. Tony V3RZ met him at a flea market years ago, and he told me about moving around the band map with key presses, and that let me increase my contact rate for search and pounce considerably. Rich V3KI, who revealed the secrets how to cancel your RIT settings when you're using N1MM, so that the RIT goes back to 0 for each new contact. I've also run the slides for both of these presentations past Rich, who picked up a few bugs and helped me fine tune it. Sorry, Stan, I misspelled your name. V3TW told me about call history, which has turned out to be very useful. And Bert V3NR, who insisted and still does that I should be in the chair for the last 2 hours of every contest. Unfortunately, he got a little slack on Sunday afternoon, and he brought in all that stormy weather, and I chickened out about 5 o'clock, and in anticipation of lightning, disconnected everything, so I lost those critical 2 hours. No need to try and make notes while I'm proceeding along here. I'll give Tony a zip file of all of the slides in this presentation, and you can download it from the CCO group's website. And I hope that you'll find it very useful. Okay, so accessing or configuring the telnet window. To access the telnet window, In the main N1MM logger program entry window, which is the one where you fill in the call sign and so forth, go to the Window tab and then left click on Telnet, fourth from the bottom in the drop-down list. I'll show you a picture in a minute. And then in that window, you right click and then left click on Help. So there's the window. So you click on the window. That gives you Telnet down around here somewhere. You click on Telnet and then right click on the window that you get. This will give you not the window where you're going to make configurations. It gives you access to all of the documentation that you want to read regarding Telnet windows. All those very useful topics on clusters, all the download information with clusters, the bands and the modes tab, the filters tab, the spot comment, the band plans. So these are all the different areas you want to read. And these you will find are all hot links. So as you put your mouse on them, as I am here, you'll find they're hot. And as you click on them, they'll go to other areas of the N1MM documentation, which are related to the topic at hand. So it's a very quick way to get up to speed on exactly what you want to find out.
Mike, sorry to interrupt. Do you take questions now or later?
We're going to configure Telnet. Well, let's try doing it now so you don't. What's the question?
The question.
Any questions?
Yeah, the question is that when I click on the Telnet windows, nothing comes up but basically the menu bar at the top. I can't see the rest of the window.
So you see this, but nothing else?
No, when I click on the window, click on Windows and then go to Telnet, I just see the basic menu bar at the top, just a strip. I don't see anything the rest of the window.
Oh, I have no idea, Bert.
Okay.
Offhand, what that would be caused by.
Mike, have you got a slide showing the Telnet window?
Yes.
Okay, that may show it. Show what Bert's looking for.
Okay, is that what you're looking for, Bert? You want the Telnet window?
That's what it should look like, but I just
this is what you're trying to get to.
I just see the top portion, the blue line at the top where it says Telnet. That's it.
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to work on that problem.
Okay.
Put your thinking cap on, Doug.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
let me go back to.
You would like to maybe drag it down to open up if you see only one tab with a, let's say, Telnet. It might be you just need to expand the window.
I tried to do the expansion and doesn't.
That might be it, Bert. Maybe you just want to grab the bottom of the window and pull it down. Could that possibly be the problem? It's all there, but it's just compressed vertically.
I think I tried that, but I'll do that again. Okay.
Okay. Let me go back a few so I'll get into the sequence. So here's where we talked about how to read the documentation on Telnet. And now we're going to get into configuring Telnet itself. Telnet obtains station information from connected internet nodes of what they call packet clusters. And those nodes are called clusters. The first step is to choose to which cluster you wish to connect. And the list is extremely long. However, the one that both Doug and I are using presently and have done for some time is VA7 Charlie Charlie, and we'll get into the detail of that very shortly. Packet clusters, a little bit of history on where they came from, and I'll let you read that, but I won't read it to you. Everybody ready to move on? All right. So a typical telnet window. I'll just give you a quick glance at it here. Here's a typical telnet window. The cluster we're on presently is W9PA. And it's being operated by N4ZR. That's the operator who's presently got the cluster set up. And he's got it up and running. And it's taking in information from the internet. And these are entries from the cluster showing different stations, different frequencies, who is repeating it. That is to say, who is posting the information and on what frequency. So let me just go back now that you've seen this. The typical telnet window shows the W9PA cluster being used, and the operator is N4ZR. And then he talks about the listing at the bottom in blue, shows the different stations being posted by the cluster with call signs, frequencies, and signal intensities. And you'll find when you're actually watching this, that this is a dynamic display. It's always moving. It's always moving. It moves up. The configuration for how long each of these is posted before it disappears. And generally, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes seems to be typical of what people set. If you want to configure the cluster, then here's how you do it. You click on the Clusters tab at the top of the screen. This is that same window that I just showed you. If you click on Clusters, you arrive at the following screen. Here's the Clusters screen. The present cluster being used is V7CC Net 23. Don't ask me what all that means because I don't know. There's a live cluster list available, which you will get if you click on this little arrow going down. And you can make that list only for North America, which is good. You don't want to get postings from worldwide clusters because you may not hear the stations that they're posting. So for our case, North America only. You might also have a favorites list once you set up a bunch of clusters. And the favorites, starting off with V7CC, will be found in this list. And you can edit them, or you can just simply list them and choose one or the other in order to have it operational. And then to select a cluster, you come down here and you connect to the cluster that you've chosen. It's really very simple once you know what the procedure is. And it was Doug who worked out this whole procedure. Now, if you left click on the down arrow at the right side of the live cluster list, that's the down arrow at the right side of the left, of the live cluster list. And there it is there. You will see a list of available clusters. And I'd love to show you this, but I couldn't figure out how to make a screenshot of that list. Every time I clicked on the clippings software, the list disappeared. So you'll have to take my word for it. Now, here's the step-by-step procedure according to Doug for configuring your telnet cluster. And again, we're talking about V7CC. So in the live cluster list box, you click on the box besides North America only, There's the box. Click on that for North America only. And then click in the box beside enable the live cluster list access and opt into data collection. Sorry, let me go back one. There, that's what I'm talking about. So first you click on North America only, and then you enable the cluster list access and opt into the data collection. Now in the live cluster list, you go up and down the list and look for North America V7CC Net 23. And when you left click on that, which is the normal way of clicking, a check mark appears to indicate that the cluster has been chosen. You enter your call sign and left click on connect, and their spots should start to scroll. Spots should start to scroll in the Telnet window. So now you can see that it's been listed. You've got a tick mark that says you're ready to go. And you should be up and running. Before we move on, any questions on the procedure? I tried to get Doug to give me a step-by-step procedure because, like a good portion of you, you don't really know what you're doing in this particular software. You just have to figure out how to use the steps to get where you want to go. And I've tested this on several computers now, and it works consistently. So yeah, any questions before I move on?
Yeah, Mike, the only thing I would mention is that you've also got another cluster node that you can connect to, which is Mike Walker's VA3MW. And the nice thing about his is that you don't have to configure anything because his cluster is already configured to only show northeastern stations as the originators. So you're not going to get, Californians giving you spots and things.
What I do, Tony, is
I
put Mike's cluster name in my favorites list. So I have at the moment 3. There's VE7CC, VA3MW, and W1VE. The 3 of them are in my favorites list. So if one of them dies, I can get to a very reliable one quickly.
That's a good use of the favorites list. And Doug has reminded me that I should say that every now and again, one of these clusters will die. All of a sudden, everything seems to be working fine, but you're not getting any information through the telnet, which generally means there's a problem with the cluster, in which case the best thing to do is to have another one ready to go in the favorites list and just simply click on it and then proceed elsewhere.
Yeah,
I've had that happen several.
The other thing, Mike, is when you had that screen showing the telnet window with the spots in it, when you see a spot, that has the hyphen hashtag, that means that spot is coming from a skimmer. If you don't see the hyphen hashtag, it's coming from an actual station. So you see those spots there, the spotting.
What do you mean by hash, Tony?
You see on the left-hand side, it says DXDE, and then there is a hyphen, and then you've got the hashtag mark.
Like a number sign.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That means it's a CW skimmer.
Okay.
And that's why on those ones, you get the dB reading. It tells you what strength that skimmer is seeing that signal from, because it's showing you, like for instance, the first one there, it shows it's CW. It's 31 dBs at 28 words per minute, and that's another clue coming from a cluster.
Okay, that's information that to me is above and beyond the housewife level, but certainly the next level up, that would be useful to know.
Well, the one thing I mentioned is that what's useful about it is if you have a telnet that's showing those clusters, if you start calling CQ, it will pick your call up. And the various skimmers there that pick your call up will also show the signal strength that they're receiving you at.
Okay, like the reverse,
like the RBN.
Like RBN, yeah, which is a useful feature. Okay, thanks, Tony. Any more chat on the N1MM clusters before I move on? Okay, let me give you a little bit of information on single operator 2VFO. You'll find these days that the guys in contests with the highest scores are those who are using the technique called SO2R, which is a single operator, two receivers. And I understand that it takes a lot of practice to use this technique, as Doug will probably attest. But once you have done so, it seems to speed up your contact rate tremendously. However, you're often putting the same antenna on two different transceivers. And so you need some special filters to make sure that A transceiver doesn't blow up B transceiver in the process. It's quite a complicated setup from what I understand and read. And you have to really dedicate your station or a station to SO2R. But there's a compromise available. And that to any of you who have transceivers with two receivers inside, a main receiver and a sub receiver, such as the K3 or the IC7610, perhaps the flex radios, of which I have no familiarity, you can use a technique called SO2V, which is single operator 2 VFOs. And it approximates the function of SO2R, but you don't have to have any special filters, even if you're using the same antenna on both receiver channels. I've been doing this now offhand for a couple of years. Again, there's a learning process involved, but it's very short compared to SO2R. And it's very useful when the band becomes a little quiet. Sunday afternoon in the CQ Worldwide contest, when your rate drops to 20 or 30 and you're starting to get a little bored, this is a time to trot out SO2V, because this process allows you to run stations on one frequency while you're doing search and pounce on another. In my case, I use it to run stations on one frequency on one band, while I'm using the band map with the other receiver looking for search and pounce tactics. Try again, sorry. Search and pounce targets. And it doesn't have to be the same band. Now the K3 limits you to the same band. I don't know about the flex rigs or the K4, but with my IC7610, I discovered very quickly that I can operate two different bands at the same time. And as we'll get along in this discussion, you'll see that I can be chasing search and pounce targets on the band map on 40 CW while I'm calling CQ on 20-meter phone. And it's relatively easy to do. N1MM does most of the housekeeping for you. And it's a way of increasing your rate considerably when things are slow. If you're running a good rate to begin with, it's not going to speed your rate up. And in fact, it might slow it down. So this is the detail that I've been giving you here. SO2V lets you operate on two frequencies or two bands, often with different modes, depending on your transceiver model. And it's a technique you will use when the contest has slowed down and you're trying to maintain a good rate. And I find if I'm running a rate of 60 or more, the SO2V does not do very much for me. I ran stations for an hour on 20 meters in the latter part of the afternoon on Sunday. And my plan was to run for a while, go off the air around 3 o'clock and have a good sleep, come back on at 5 and run the last 2 hours of the contest. And I really only wanted to run for about a half an hour, but I hit one of those hot runs that I've never really seen before. And I ran constantly for an hour. I was showing rates above 200 contacts per hour. And I worked 140 stations in that hour, which worked out to about 2.3 contacts per minute, which is certainly as fast as I've ever done it before. And it was only when the run stopped, when I ran out of targets, that I finally went off the air and took that snooze. And when I woke up at 5 o'clock, the bad weather had moved in, and that was the end of the contest. Okay, SO2B operation. You want to use stereo headphones, or what we call split headphones, so you can listen to both receivers at the same time. And I'm going to show you a SO2V screen and then come back to this again. So here's my SO2V screen. These are both data entry screens, one for the main or left receiver, the other for the sub receiver. The main receiver is being used for search and pounce, going up and down the band map. I've stopped at AC5K. You can see that the software has put AC5K as a possible contact in the data entry screen. And while I'm doing this, I can be calling CQ with the other receiver. So the two processes are happening at the same time. If I get a call on the CQ, I just simply turn the audio off here and start working the stations that are calling me on my run. If nobody is calling me on my run, I let the radio call CQ while I continue to move up and down the band map, or I'll listen to AC5K and see if that is a good target to chase. You can see that this receiver is on 20 meters on CW. That's what it says up there. And this receiver is on 40 meters. And am I on CW or am I on phone? I can't tell offhand.
CW.
CW, yep. So I'm operating CW on two different bands in this particular case, calling CQ on 40 while I'm chasing search and pounce on 20.
So essentially, Mike, you're just it's swapping the receivers back and forth between active and sub receiver, the main receiver and the sub receiver to transmit, right? So when you're transmitting, say, calling CQ on the sub and listening on the sub receiver, it's
Yep.
flipping that to transmit mode on the main on the main.
No. I'm listening to two receivers simultaneously.
Right. Yeah.
And then.
But your transmit frequency, because you're going to be transmitting on two different frequencies at different times, it's setting that transmit frequency, back. It's swapping the transmit frequency back and forth, right?
It swaps the transmitter back and forth and the keyboard focus.
Right.
Because I'm only using one keyboard.
Right.
And it's the backslash key on the keyboard that does the job.
Right.
And you press that.
The backslash, or I think sometimes it's focus is the pause button or function B.
Well, there are two or three different keys that you can use depending on exactly what you want to have happen.
Right.
But I've always used the backslash, so that's the one that comes immediately to mind.
Right.
And I've got a little label on the backslash key on my contesting keyboard, and it says CWSO2V.
Right.
So I just hit that when I want to go back and forth. And you'll actually see the focus change from this data entry screen to that one. And you'll start hearing much more of this receiver than that receiver. And it takes a little while to set it up, but once you've got the hang of it, it's pretty quick. And once you've become accustomed to it, you can do a pretty quick rate. So you're really filling in the holes when nobody's calling you.
Yeah.
On your run, you might be able to work a search and pounce contact or two.
So,
and then
so
when
what
you
would
run out
be
of those, you go back and call CQ again.
right? So they're really not much more advantage to running a unless you have a different operative, to full SO2R, right?
Oh, I'm sure that SO2R is more efficient and faster, but this is a lot easier to set up.
Right.
If you don't want to get involved in all of the special filters and so forth, to make sure that your antenna is well isolated from whatever that your rig is isolated from the other one when you're transmitting.
Yep.
In this case, the transceiver does all the work.
Yeah.
And I have no problems at all as far as overloading one front end with the other and so forth and so on. It seems to be all automatic. So it's a very cheap and dirty way of getting into SO2R. But it's one keyboard, and you switch the keyboard focus back and forth. And you've got two receivers running simultaneously on stereo headphones, which in itself is a little bit strange because you're listening to two CW signal streams at the same time. Now, I find I can't do that. I can't concentrate on two at the same time. So the CW stream I'm listening to is the one where I'm running. But I'm not really listening to a CW stream here when I'm moving up and down the passband until I stop and actually focus. But if I find a station that is prime to be called, then I'll concentrate on him and sort of stop focusing on my run receiver. Do you get the idea?
Yep.
And there are a number of different ways of doing SO2V. You can CQ on two different frequencies with two different receivers. You can do search and pounce with two different receivers using two different band maps. There are all kinds of different variables and ways of using this technique. But this is the way that I use it. And it's really kind of fun once you get it going, and it starts to fly.
Okay, question for you, Mike.
Yep.
Switching between the two entry windows, do you just click in the respective window you want?
No, I press, in my case, the backslash key on the keyboard.
Oh, okay, but could you just click in it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever tried that. I'm not sure that anything I've ever read says give it a try.
Okay.
But the backslash, because you don't want to just listen on the other receiver, you want to move the keyboard focus over to the other receiver as well.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just go back here. So you saw the screen. By the way, band map operations, so V3KI tells me, can also be performed both on sideband and CW.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go into that because I don't understand that yet, but he tells me that it is possible because it's not a question of an automatic station like the RBN being able to copy CW, but it can't copy voice. That was always my impression. And my impression was that all of these postings were done with automatic listening stations, such as used by the RBN, the Reverse Beacon Network. But V3KI tells me that a lot of these postings are being done manually by people as they run across these stations. And I can't understand how they've got the time in the middle of a hot contest to start posting stations on the internet.
I've done that, Mike, and it works easily. Just press the spot button there.
There's two ways. There's two ways you can do it, actually. One is, as Bert says, is that you can press the spot button that's on the entry window. The other one is you can select in the and I forget whether it's the tools or the config or which tab it is on the entry window, but you can select to spot QSOs that have not been spotted. In other words, if you work a station, it hasn't been spotted, it'll automatically spot it for you.
Oh, I see. All right. So, well, if it's just a matter of pushing a button, that answers my question. Okay, let's move on because time is going by. Try to limit this presentation to about an hour, but I think I'm going to fail. So SO2V operations. I'm going to show you the next screen, which is the corresponding front panel of my 7610 during this same SO2V operation. And I'll show you the screen. And here we are. So in this particular case, I'm on 20 meters with the main receiver. I'm doing search and pounce. I'm using a narrow bandwidth. I'm using full break-in. And in the IC7610, you don't get a choice of full break-in on one receiver while you're using another receiver as well. So if you have full break-in on one, you have full break-in on the other. The other receiver, the sub-receiver, is on 40 meters, also on CW. I'm running here, so I'm using a wider bandwidth, 500 hertz bandwidth, just to make sure if somebody calls me just off my, just off my frequency, I'll still hear them. And in this transceiver, I can put one waterfall under the other. So I can see where I'm operating. I can pick out clear frequencies for running. And I can also see the stations posted on the bandwidth, on the band map as well. So let me just go back here and see if I've forgotten anything. No, left receiver is on 20. Bandwidth is 200. Right receiver is on 40. Bandwidth is 500. And I'm using QSK or full break-in. Okay, any questions before I go on? No? Okay. Operating tips. Although N1MM will allow auto repeat of CQs, you'll find it confusing when you're doing SO2V. I find just as I'm preparing to switch over to search and pounce to work somebody on the band map, N1MM will start another CQ. Very disconcerting. I send my CQs manually, and of course, enter sends message, and then you control the timing of your CQs. Stations responding to your CQs should have priority, and if you develop a nice run, just turn off the search and pounce receiver audio until you've worked all the run stations. My particular rig has, oh, you're not going to see it here, but my particular rig has two little buttons concurrent with the audio controls. And if I push that button, it cuts off the audio on that channel. And a little light comes on indicating that you've turned off the audio. Very handy. And if you find a target station on the band map but you don't work them, just return to your run and check the search and pounce target from time to time until you work them. Okay, finally, we'll talk about interfacing, and that's the last part of the presentation. The ability of the computer to send CW through your transceiver is a function we call interfacing. And in the good old days, I had a transistor switch driving a fast relay and connected this to my parallel port on the computer. Everybody here remember parallel ports? The software of the day drove the transistor, and I was in business. Now you hook your rig up directly to the computer using a USB or a serial connector. And if you're lucky, the computer will read the band and frequency and send the CW as well. If you're not lucky, you may have to insert a Win keyer, which is a small external keying device, between the radio and the computer. In my case, my K3 and the IC7610s work just fine with direct connection, but I could never get my Kenwood TS590 to send CW from the computer, and I had to use a Win keyer. And that was strange because Kenwood had a kind of a demonstration program that you could download. And during that demonstration program, the program would send CW through the computer to the TS590. And that worked fine. But when I called Kenwood, they couldn't tell me how it worked or why it worked. And I never did figure it out. So eventually I bit the bullet, bought a Win keyer, and that worked fine. Interfacing information comes through a port on your computer. Think of it as a big open hole in the middle of the computer system. Information flows through driver for your transceiver from the manufacturer's website, and that driver will probably establish a virtual port that you'll be able to see with your device manager. The special driver comes from your rig's manufacturer, and you can see the new port with the device manager that's built into the Windows system. And you find the device manager by going to the lower left-hand corner to where the start button is. You press the start button and you do a search for device manager. And this is what I see when I bring up the device manager. It's a utility that shows you everything that's inside your computer. And this is my complete ports. And I think this means the parallel ports. And the drivers from ICOM put in two new ports. They're called virtual ports. They're from an outfit which I guess is called Silicon Labs, and it's COM4 and COM5. And as far as I know, I could use either one of those as my active port when I want to send CW with the computer.
I think so.
In the main, sorry? Question? No? Okay. To adjust N1M configuration for your transceiver, in the main entry window, in the upper menu, you click on Configure, Configure Ports, Mode Control, Win Key, etc. And here's the resulting screen that you get. Okay, this is a configuration screen. Now, I think I have a bigger one in the next go-around. Yes. Okay. And this gets you up and running, configuring your transceiver and, configuring your software for N1MM. So the first thing you do is choose your port, and I'm using COM5. Then you choose your radio from a very long list, and there's the IC7610. At one point, I had two radios installed here, the K3 and the IC7610. But now I just have IC7610s. You choose your mode, in my case, CW, and you choose the set button. You click on the set button to establish your interfacing configuration parameters, which are actually listed over here. Now, don't ask me what they mean, why they're there. I ain't a computer guy. But here's the screen. And you have to set up the speed, the parity, the data bits, the stop bit. I find that DTR on CW works, and RTS always off works. There's a special code for the ICOM rigs, which you can insert. And this is my radio number 1. ICOM even give you some suggestions for settings. They use a slower speed, and they suggest DTR is always off and RTS is always off. But that didn't work for me. But maybe it's relative with a COM port powered interface, and that may be the difference we're talking here. So again, very easy to set it up. If you have to use a WinKeyer, N1MM will allow for that variation. You go back to the configure screen and you click on the WinKey tab, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over from the left-hand side. And that gets you this screen. And here's the configurer for the WinKeyer. Side tone, different pin numbers. You want to use the WinKeyer speed pot. And this lets you set up the way the WinKeyer is going to work. Now, finally, you have to adjust the radio itself, the transceiver. And inside all of these modern transceivers, there's a menu for interfacing detail. And this is the interfacing detail for my 7610s. And again, I just did as I was told. I'm not quite sure what it all means, but it works. And if you set this all up properly, just as I did my K3, everybody's happy. There's a little more detail on the same screen. And I think I'm just over the hour limit. And this is the end of part 2. Okay, we're open for any questions. You like my end, Bert?
Yeah. I have a question starting from the end there. When you talk about the WinKeyer, because I'm always using the WinKeyer, it gives a much better connection between the radio and the computer. And
I think it depends. I think it depends on your computer and how happy it is. Because
it does.
As I understand it, you need the WinKeyer when the timing of the computer, for whatever reason, is not fast enough to handle the Morse code.
Yeah, exactly. If the computer is a little slow, you get a little bit staccato in the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then my question or my suggestion was that also when you set up the WinKeyer, check off the box there, WinKeyer interrupt or something. So as soon as you touch your paddles, the program stops immediately. Let's say you're running something and you want to do something, you just touch the paddle and it stops the run.
And which one is it? Which one of these settings are you talking about?
Let me see now. Where the heck was that one? Key in mode auto space. That doesn't look like mine. Because you can interrupt as soon as you touch the paddle. Let's say you are in a run sequence, it stops the run immediately.
Okay.
I have to go and look at mine. That doesn't look like mine. Okay, I'll get back to it.
All right, there might be another screen. I haven't used a WinKeyer since the days of my TS 950, so 590 rather.
Okay.
The TS 590 needed the WinKeyer, and I'm multiple years beyond that now, so I can't remember.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I had something else that's not related to Telnet.
Yep.
Or it is related to Telnet. I would say you said NA only, North America only, when it comes to the cluster and what stations are going to be spotted. I would like to caution you about that, because if you do that, you might miss out on something just because it's not spotted by someone on the East Coast, you can still work stations.
Well, that may or may not be true. Sure, that's a good point.
Actually, I can echo that, because there's, depending on propagation, you can't always. There's always a balance act, right? Do you have a lot of like spots that you can't actually hear from? But I find that it's better to have those spots available just in case versus missing them, right? And it's a preference thing.
Yeah, I think the same, actually. You have to be a little careful so you don't spend too much time with those weak stations. But let's say, as I said to you there, Mike, that the 2 last hours, I'm always on the run of the contest. The 2 last hours, I run the last 2 hours, because that picks up a lot of stuff, actually.
That was my intention, Bert, until you brought in that storm.
Yeah.
And I looked out the window and it was raining like hell here. And I thought, boy, there's lightning just around the corner, I bet. I'm going to disconnect everything.
Yeah.
And it rained for the rest of the night.
And if you also
so
see
I chickened out.
Yeah, if you also see a spot at the end where you can spend a little more time for a new multiplier, let's say, that is not spotted by anyone in North America, you'll give it a little more time, because you know how much a multiplier is worth at the end of the contest.
Well, that's a good point. There's no doubt about it. There's endless learning to be done in this contesting.
Okay, I got a tip for you. One of the things that I think you were probably mentioned in part 1, Mike, was that when you have the telnet window open and spots are going through the telnet window, they're also being posted into the available multipliers window. And the available and the available multipliers window, one of the things I learned just recently is that there is a column that shows the time of the spot. And if you click on time as the header of the column, it will sort the spots based on the most recent spot being at the top of the list. Now, what that's important for is that those are fresh spots that have come up. Because quite often what you might find is that you're clicking on a spot and it may be 30 minutes old and it may not be there anymore. And you click on it and all of a sudden you find it's some other station that's actually on that frequency. But if you click...
I've had that happen.
Yeah, and if you sort it by time, you'll have the most recent one at the top of the list.
I'll try and remember that, and maybe you can put a note on that in an email to me. Doug and I have done some work on the available queues and multipliers window. I used it in the most recent CQ Worldwide contest. No, CQ Worldwide contest. And my scores and my totals for multipliers was higher in that contest than in any other, at least going back to 2014. So it's a very effective window. I never did launch the multipliers window in this particular case. I used available queues and multipliers instead. And that was the first time I'd ever used it. So the idea of the timing is very good indeed. If you decide you want a part 3 on N1MM, and we're getting a bit beyond the housewife level at this point, we can work up another session. Tony, go ahead.
Okay, cool.
I had another comment. Who was the one who suggested that I should pull down my window in the telnet windows? Was that Mario or Dennis?
I think it was Mario.
Sorry, what was that again?
Who suggested that I should do a pull down from my telnet windows to see the whole window? Was that you, Dennis?
That was Tony, I think.
No, it was
Mario. That wasn't me.
Mario.
It was. Anyway, I did that again, and it works. Now I can see the whole telnet window. Thank you.
There you go. We solved your problem.
I have never seen this before, and I tried to click, the minimize button and the full window button. Nothing happened. But when I pulled it down, it works.
Well, then we'll consider the presentation to be a success, Bert, if for no other reason than it solved your problem.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations. Yeah, does that mean lunch is off on Friday because you don't need me anymore?
No, I didn't say that. We have a lot more to discuss.